Hey, what's up, everybody? This is your boy Drum Dealer from Sound Narcotics, and today I'm gonna be doing a beat breakdown on how to make a Bryson Tiller type of beat. So if you're interested in trying to get that sound that you're hearing on a lot of Bryson records, check this out. All right, I'm using Logic X, but again, as I've said in my other tutorials, you can use these techniques in any DAW or any hardware, just as long as you have the fundamentals and the idea that you want to put out. As long as you have that, you can create it on whatever you want to. All right, so let's get started here. Okay, Bryson, he usually makes his records with a slower BPM. You're not gonna really hear him on a lot of up tempo stuff as of yet. At least I haven't heard him, other than that song "Wild Thoughts" with Rihanna. But for the most part, it's pretty laid back, mid tempo, slow. So I set the tempo to 126. Give it that halftime feel. Let's start off with the kick. Oh, by the way, these sounds I'm using, these drum sounds, you can all get at my website on soundnarcotics.com, and I also use some Sylenth patches. I put a free kit, a free Sylenth precinct bank that you could download. Okay, so I use battery 4. Let me unfreeze this. I use battery 4 for my drum programming. I put a API 550A on here with a limiter. I'm just gonna wait for this to load up. And let me, while I'm speaking of what I did on each track, hold on, let me exit out of here. You guys should really learn about gain staging if you haven't already. I try to keep my tracks between -20 dB and -10, just so that when I send it off to the artist, when they get it mastered, it's not too much. It's the signal's not too hot when somebody's trying to master it, and it gives it more headroom in order to be mastered. All right, so now for the kick, I'm using this. What am I using? Using this number 38 kick. I like it. It knocks. I don't have to really do too much to it. As I said, I put a Waves A PI 550A on it, and there's a preset. I usually don't like using presets, but in this case, it just really worked. So I just tweaked it a little bit. For the most part, I just kept it the same, and I put a limiter on it. When you guys are using your limiters, I'll give you a tip. I usually put the quit ceiling at around -0.1 dB, and then I just mess with the threshold to get it to sound louder. As far as the bit rate, I just leave it on 24. Leave it on whatever you're bouncing to. I'm bouncing my projects at 24 bits, so I just leave it at that. The dither, I just left it on type 2. I like how type 2 sounds, and shaping normal. So you're going to get a kick that sounds like this. Just a real simple, pattern as far as the kick goes. And that's basically it. As far as I use 2 snares. The first snare, I used another one of my snares from my kits. Just give it a second to load up. Snare 2. I like how it hits. I don't really have to do too much tweaking to it. It just hits out the box. I put an enveloper on her. Normally I don't put envelopers on my snares like that, but I felt like this one kind of hit too hard, I guess you could say. So I just took out the attack of it. Just a little bit of the attack, so it wasn't too overwhelming, and I EQ'd it. Oops, let me load it back up. I I cut the lows out. I try to cut the lows out a lot of my drums unless it's like a percussion where I really need it, just so I can leave room for the kick and the sub bass. All right, so if you were to hear those two in context, the snare pattern is just real simple, 2 and 4. Yeah, just real simple, and then I layer that with another snare. Let me solo that. Again, battery 4. I also use the enveloper on this and cut out the lows, just like I said, for uh, mixing. I wanted to give it. Hold on. I think that's the clap I'm playing with it, just to make sure. No, I'm using this one. Again, all these sounds from my kit. I think that just hits really hard and has a nice, real, clean snap to it. And I just layered it every other hit. As far as the snare, I just layered it with the clap so you could hear it all in context. It sounds like this. And that's how you're really going to get that big sound. You're going to get it from layering your drums. If you listen to Bryson Tiller, a lot of his stuff, the drums really hit, versus other R&B artists like maybe Usher or Trey Songz or whoever. The drums kind of just stand. They don't stand out of the mix. They're in the mix. They don't hit too hard. It's more mixed towards for more traditional R&B. But with Bryson Tiller stuff, it really has a hard knock to it. All right, hi-hat. Let me unfreeze this. I cut out the lows and boosted the highs. I tend to boost the highs on my hi-hats. Anything, well, it depends on the hi-hat sample, but around maybe 5 to 10K I'll boost just so it can cut through the mix a little bit more. And using battery again on it. Hold on, let me load it. Let me see what I used on it. I'm on my other computer, so it doesn't run as fast. Now with my hi-hats, I mentioned this in some of my other videos, but I usually pitch them differently. And that's how you're really going to get that effect that, he has on his tracks. The hi-hats, they have a real nice slide, a nice groove to them, and they're getting that because they're pitching the hi-hats in different tones. So like this one is pitched at -5 and this one is at -7. So, if you play them real fast, the 1/64th or the 1/32 or whatever, it gives it a nice little feel. So, I'll let you hear what I'm talking about. You see how, hold on, I'll do it again. See how the pitch was different as the hi-hat pattern went on. So and with Logic, I don't really, like I said before, it's not about the DAW, but with Logic you do kind of, at least for me, I tend to do my cut my hi-hats in different ways or different parts. I'll just play it straight at like 1/16, and then I'll go back and I'll edit them and chop them, because it's not like Fruity Loops or other softwares where it's easier to do those hi-hat rolls, but you can't do it in Logic. I pan that. Let me talk about panning. Yeah, I pan that to the left about -9. The snare, I forgot to say, I panned it to the left 3, and this snare as well is 3, and the kick, I oh no, I pan this one at 4 to the right, +4, and then the kick I usually just leave in the middle. I leave all my kicks and my subs in mono at 0, so I don't really do too much with that. So if you were to hear everything in context, it'd sound like this. Hold on. and then it drops out for the verse. I added some open hats, just sprinkled on there, just to give it more of a bounce. I cut out the lows again on it. Just I already explained that, and panned it to the right about 10. Um, just so I could have one hi hat pattern pan to the left and then one hi hat pattern pan to the right, just to give it more of a bigger feel. Here it is. And now when I'm making my beats, like I said, I gain stage, so this is down pretty far, minus 27 dBs. So, unless you really solo it by itself, it's gonna be hard to hear. But I just think it gave it more dynamics. And when you gain stage properly, you may want to have the urge to play it louder, because just as hip hop and R&B producers or whatever, trap producers, you want it to crank, you want it to knock. So you may mess with the volume, you may play with the faders, but I would only mess with the master fader if you were to do that. Keep everything low, like I said, between -20, -10 dBs, and then if you do want to hear it louder, like I have a T-Rack CS on here, I'll just boost it up here, the output over here, and that way it's still loud. And just to give you guys another tip, another secret, I use the preset, what is it, the Vintage 2, and then I tweak it from there. But Vintage 2, I think, is just incredible. It gives it a real sheen, a real polish to your tracks. All right. Oh, and Bryson Tiller uses a lot of samples, so I just took the sample and I chopped it, and here it is. I just used the SSL channel EQ on this. I don't think I really did too much to it, but I did when you turn this button, this red button right here, it's like an analog knob or button. So although I'm not messing with any of the frequency bands or anything like that, when you hit this and you turn this on, this red button down here, it gives it that feel, that warmth as if it was ran through a SSL. Although I'm not tweaking any of the stuff, any of the other parameters, I'm just letting it just run through the board, the virtual board, you could say, of a SSL, just to give it that warmer feel. So here's what it sounds like with the sample. Hold on. Another thing, like I said, I'm doing this on my other computer, so it's not as powerful. In Logic, you can freeze your tracks, and in order and to do that, you just go up to track, configure track header, and you can just select freeze, and it'll let you freeze your tracks to save up some CPU and let you create without it, maxing out, giving you system overload messages. I didn't really use too many tracks on this, so I didn't really need to do that, but it's just a habit I have. When you have knocking drums and a dope sample and an 808 that hits, you don't really need a whole lot of tracks in your song. So here it is with the sample. Now, when my verses come in, I try to do something different than the hook, so I'll just take some instruments out or add them in, just to give it a different feel, like, okay, this is a different part of the song. And I added a 808 that comes in on the verse parts. Hold on. I use a tuner for my 808s just because I like to chop mine from, or make mine my own, and don't really know what key it is in unless you have like perfect pitch and you have a perfect ear. That's the 808. But in order to tell what note that is, I use a tuner that comes built in with Logic, and it'll let me know what note it is. That happened to be C, so it worked out. And I threw an EQ on here. Just cut out some of the extreme lows that you can't really hear around 20 hertz. Below that you can't really hear, and I think just from 20 to like 33 hertz it was just really muddy, and I wanted to be a lot cleaner. And then I boosted the lows and the low mids, so it would sound like this. So when I play it. Keep in mind how you play your 808s too. You want to play them in with that trap, dirty south vibe, and that's what he usually sings over, those trap 808 drums, and the 808 patterns and the sub bass patterns are really trap, and then he sings on top, so he has like a pretty high end and just a real gritty, dirty low end, and it makes for a nice combination. Now, like I said, you'll be able to get these Sylenth presets for free. I'll put it up so you guys can get that. And I just used a lead in Sylenth. There's nothing really too complex going on here in Sylenth, but I did cut out the lows and the highs, and just gave it a boost in the mids, just to give it that effect that you hear in a lot of Bryson Tiller songs. He has a lot of filters where he cuts off the lows and the highs and boosts the mids. Gives it that bandpass type, underwatery kind of lo-fi feel. So if I was to play this all in context, it would sound like this. Just real simple, nothing crazy. I did play it in key with the sample. I'm gonna do a whole different tutorial on how to play, your melodic instruments in key with your samples, because some people have been messaging me about that. Just real simple lead pattern, and then I stacked the sample chop, because it's playing chords with just a chord that comes in every so often, only on the first part, the first 4 bars of the hook. So it would sound like this. Again, it's nothing too complex, just a 3-finger chord. I didn't play any minor 7ths or minor 9ths or 11ths, which he does play in a lot of his music. You will hear those big chords, but I thought this one just worked really simple how it was. I played a C sharp with an E with a G sharp, so it would sound like I played it in the higher octaves, but now hearing it, I could have played it in the lower octaves too. It's just a basic C sharp minor chord. I like that sound. I might have to make a new beat out of that sound just by itself. But yeah, go get that that free Sylenth. It's like a mini preset bank with like over 40 sounds, I think. It's really dope. And then I added a bass, sub bass in Sylenth. Cut out the lows, just the really lows. I didn't think it needed, and the highs. I just wanted to give it a real lo-fi sound. And that's pretty much it. It's just trying to think. Not really anything crazy as far as the bass, just because when I program my sounds, the bass, I try not to do too much with it. But yeah, if you want to give it a dirtier sound, you could go into the distortion and play with that. Or if you wanted to, you know, add some reverb or delay. But I didn't really, for my basses in this pack, I didn't really go too hard on these, just because I wanted to give it a straight, clean knock to it, as you could say. Mess with the pitch envelope just on the decay, just to give it a little excuse me, just to give it a little bit of deviation on the decay, and put an LFO with the cutoff AB, just to play with the cutoff, you know, while you're I'm playing around here. But yeah, nothing too crazy as far as any of these synths really, with the presets. Okay, where am I? I'm going off track. All right, the bass, I just added it on the hook part because I also have this sub 808 on the verses, so this is what it would sound like in context with everything on it. Yeah, and that's pretty much it. Like I said, I just put a T-Vex CS on it, the Vintage 2 preset, turned it up some. Again, when you're doing all these beats, when you know, make sure you gain stage properly. Like I said, if you go through all these, you'll see that they're, not saying you have to do it on every track, but they're within, you know, the highest being like maybe -10 dB. And I try to consciously gain stage. That way it's a lot easier than making the beat than having to go back and gain stage. And it's just a big headache. But yeah, that's pretty much